Hey everybody, it's Dave Whitmarsh again from Best Practice in HR. I have a special guest today, Emma from Lever Transfer Learning. She's joining me all the way from Australia. Hi Emma.
Great to be here. Hi, good to be here, David. Thank you.
So, so Emma and I worked together on a couple projects, I guess almost 2 years ago now,
Hmm.
maybe even longer. And truthfully, they didn't work out as great as we both hoped, but it was a good learning experience. So um, some things I've never repeated, which is good, and some things I've done more. But I'm happy to have Emma on the call because I think she has. Well, first of all, she's just. If I could shut up long enough to let her speak, she's wonderful to listen to. She's brilliant, and and she has a really unique product. So why don't you give us a bit of a background and a bit about yourself there, Emma?
Happy to, David. But I feel we need to say the projects were not client projects, okay?
No, that is true. That actually,
Let's just get that. I tell you
okay.
what,
I'll take blame.
we've
It
got to
was
laugh at that.
marketing. It was all marketing mistakes. We tried to do like a was it like a 10 city roundtable to match Emma's schedule and sort of short notice, and we didn't quite fill the room. So
That's
it's
too funny.
nothing to
And
do
David,
nothing to do with your product. You're right.
no, and David, just happy to share because I think one of the things about learning transfer, which is our space, is that in some ways it's quite a lot for people to get their head around because it's almost so simple. Why isn't everyone doing it? And yet it feels as if it's almost even 2 or 3 years ago, I kind of think it was a bit of an idea before its time, how we tackle transfer. And so when you and I were sort of saying, look, let's talk to the American market and people out there across stateside as to what's happening, I wonder if we were just too early with our message. And interestingly, ATD ICE, it was this year was the first year that they actually had a specific learning transfer track on the conference. So I kind of think we are getting to the point now where people get learning transfer as a behavioral change part of learning, and we need to ensure people transfer their skills. So it's been a long old journey. I've been working at this now for 15 years, would you believe it? But yeah, so the space of learning transfer, behavioral change part of learning, how do we get people to apply what they learn as part of a learning intervention back into
Perfect.
their day-to-day?
Perfect. So let's back this up just a touch, and we'll say, what are some of the statistics around transfer learning and just to give people a baseline of why what you do is so important.
Yeah. And so study after study have shown that really only 10 to 20% of learning is transferred back into the workplace. And that's been over a number of years now. So this is interesting that this isn't a new issue and people have been talking about this for a very long time. And I think people look at different ways to solve it. Interestingly, there was a study recently that said the transfer of learning has gone up to 40%. So that's exciting that we're heading in the right direction. My sense is that's around we're actually getting the learning closer to the job. And so some types of learning are now easier to transfer. So when we have something that is an immediate need or someone recognizes that they have a problem, they can go online, they can access learning, and then they can apply it. I think that's where our transfer is getting much easier. I still think there's a challenge when we look around transfer where we're really trying to develop people and stretch them. So not things where they've got an immediate need, but if you really need that high performing team, they're not going to be a terrible performing team, but where you're taking that medium performer to high, that's really where we need to focus on transfer. So the stats are moving in the right direction, which is fantastic. But a lot of the time when I talk with people, they know, even as individuals, that they're not applying everything that they've learned when they've been on a learning intervention of some kind.
So would you classify, or what would you classify the definition of between application versus retention?
Don't get me started, David. I think the interesting thing is neuroscience has taken us down a path almost where now we can prove something. We're sort of using neuroscience to prove what we've already known. And that's what we're doing with retention. And people are excited about the forgetting curve and, how we can prove around retention. But a lot of the time when it's soft skills, which we know are the human skills, which are going to be so important to the future of work, the reason people don't apply, it's not because they can't remember it. It's their own fears. It's the personality things that come up that stop them applying. It's not because they can't remember the model or can't remember what they need to do. In fact, there's a big international bank who sat down a whole load of their leadership team, and they were speaking to them about leadership behaviors, and every leader in the room could say exactly what they should do in certain scenarios. What they realized was that great leadership behavior was common knowledge, but it wasn't common practice. Right. So the retention and the knowledge, it's not around that. It's all around application and actual sustained behavior change.
Mm-hmm. And so then when you can move that line as far as application, there's direct business impact on that, right? Which is exciting, right? Again, yeah. It's still a bit of a soft skill, so it's super hard to quantify, right? But definitely you can see an impact. And truthfully, you're investing. People are putting how much money into training their high potentials or their mid managers or everybody to have it not be effective as it could be or as it was designed to be, is such a loss, right?
It is. And when you really start to get that application, it's exciting from a number of levels. It's exciting for the individual because they really get, actually learning can help me change and learning can help me do things differently. So that in itself is a big win and a tick, that an individual is empowered that they can change and create great results from learning and grow themselves. From an organizational point of view, of course, it's fantastic because you're starting to get the results that you were intending to get in the first place from putting that learning initiative into place. And we've had a number of times where at the beginning of a process, a client has said, we want to do full ROI analysis, we want the numbers, we want the outcome. And then partway through, when they've suddenly started seeing people changing before their eyes, they've come back and said, Emma, don't worry about those numbers now, we don't need to do the ROI. And I said, well, I want to, let's do it. No, we can see people changing now, so we don't need to see that. And then the final area that it's really exciting for is for learning professionals and the learning team, because you can really then start to add that strategic value to the organization that learning can give. So, on a lot of different levels, when you really start to get that impact, it's a huge win.
Right. And so we had a bit of a conversation before I hit record about a customer that Emma has that sort of wanted to do everything internally and realized this is a bigger project than just saying, hey, everybody in the room, you're not going to, you're only going to take 20% or 10% or 40% if, everything's going well, back to application. So it's a lot more work than you might think, right?
And one of the interesting things is it sounds so simple, but it's a nuanced process, because what you need to do is you really need to get that individual to take the ownership to move forward. And I think we're really shifting in learning away from being the experts and having the knowledge. But certainly that's the kind of almost the pedigree. If people wanted an answer, they wanted to know how to do something, they would perhaps ask learning to teach them or train them. And we know now that it's more around facilitating, it's more about helping people learn and come to their own conclusions. And especially then when you're at behavioral change stage. And so it's a real nuanced process that you can't nag someone, you can't remind them. It's not about ticking the box. It's really about working with that individual to get ownership. And that's quite a skill. And so some teams will want, learning teams will want to develop that internally, which is fantastic. And you know, David, there's an amazing not-for-profit working in the aged care sector that we've been working with in Australia that have taken the methodology internally. I'm so thrilled for them. As a learning team, they've had a fourfold uplift in budget this year because they've started to show really great results for their organisation. The company we were talking about earlier, again, they are using some of those skills internally, but when they really got under the bonnet of it, they thought, actually, this is a real expertise. And of course, you know, we're helping them out. Very fortunate. We're delivering in 12 languages at the moment, which is quite hysterical because I always say, well, everyone on the team speaks at least 2 languages, their own language in English, so they can speak to me because I'm the only person that just has 1 language under her belt. But yeah, you know, it's really great to be able to work with people in their own language because your own language is your own internal dialogue.
Mm-hmm. So I see in a lot of ways what you guys sort of do is you're a layer on top of training, right? Or in the mix. So let's say training's a cupcake, right? And a cupcake in its own right is a good thing. But if you have icing on it, some sprinkles, and a little cherry, it's way more appetizing, right? And so really, is that a, I'm horrible with analogies, but is that how you see yourself in some degree, being able to make something better?
Definitely being able to make something better. And I would almost challenge people's assumptions there a little bit. You know, when I don't know what it's like with you, David, but the cupcake stores here at the moment are quite impressive. And once you've been to a cupcake store, why would you even buy just a plain cupcake with no topping? You know, because who's is that going to be useful? It may keep you fed, but it's not going to actually give you any results, joy, or impact. So I don't know. We may be stretching our analogy a little bit there.
I think we could go on for cupcakes for a while.
Yeah, we could.
Right. And so and so when you look at, like, let's pretend I'm the, you know, vice president of training or OD. How do I identify, you know, a product that you have as being a good fit for me? Like, what would be some signals that I might sort of see, or I might feel that, you know, you would see as a good opportunity to work with?
So the first thing is it needs to be something where you really are looking to get the change within the organization, and that's important to the organization overall. So you really need to be thinking strategically, how important is this learning intervention with what I'm looking to achieve?
Right.
You then need to be looking at what's the maturity within my organization for delivering transfer currently? Where do we have resources? What have we already got? What do we need? I think it's a red flag if you're, as a learning team, you're sort of delivering a learning intervention or a learning program and then leaving it up to the organization to create the outcomes and the results. And so I think often as a learning professional, you'll say, actually, I need to really ensure it delivers that end piece behavioral change. So if you're in that position where you know you really want to get the outcome, they're the types of things we'll be talking about.
Right.
I think the other piece is to start to think about, well, what are the behaviors that we're actually looking to change within the organization? Excuse me. The clearer you can get on that. And again, it's quite an interesting question. It sounds so simple, but people often struggle with what's the behavior that they want to achieve opposed to what's a mindset that they want to achieve.
Right. And so, and then once which is all part of, you know, which should be your thought process when you're rolling out anything,
Sure.
right? Yeah. And then is it something that everybody should be involved in, or do you recommend it for, you know, your top line managers or mid managers or anybody that's particularly been in the training? or been trained at all.
Yeah. So it's really around, I should say, it's really around soft skills, not technical training. So if it's technical training, it's probably not where you want to be heading in terms of learning transfer. And I think it's really about looking where within the organization are you going to get the biggest result. I actually think mid-level managers are often really under-invested in. And for a really small increase in investment, you can actually get a huge return because they're so close to both the customers and what you're trying to achieve as an organization.
Mm-hmm.
I can talk about this for hours, David, and it really is about looking at the particular learning program and what you're looking to achieve to actually then say, okay, well, what's the best transfer solution to go alongside that? And there's certainly different ways to sort of slice and dice. But strategically, it's like, what's the change we're trying to get? And is it going to add value to the organization?
And how important is it to, your organization and mission, all those sorts of things, right? If it's truthfully, if it's a compliance training, that's mandatory check boxes that you need to do to cover your rear end, don't bother, right? But if it's something a little deeper, you really want to focus, you really want to have, a close to 100% involvement, understanding, grasping, then you're crazy not to.
Yeah.
So got it. So a little bit, it's interesting. So you're in 12 languages, right? And I'm going to ask you to say hello in all 12. No, I won't do that. But I'm going to, but so where's, I know you're based in Australia, but where, other than Australia, where do you find most of your business comes from these days?
So we've got our largest teams outside Australia is the US and in the UK, where we, go across Europe. Mm-hmm. We've also got, South American people in South America, people in some of the European countries and certainly the Asian countries. But I think what I'm seeing is there's a big shift as people really within organizations want to see their people really excel at their human behaviors. The advantage of an organization is going to be less about the technology and the products and more about what the people behind that organization are able to achieve. And I think that's where we're starting to see people get really interested in learning transfer, because they're getting that it's the nuance piece that creates the results and the outcomes. So, and I certainly think, the US and Europe, really, people are starting to have those conversations as what do they need to be doing differently in every function.
Right. So well, yeah, absolutely. So really you can support anywhere in the world, right? From a customer base, and that's great.
Yeah.
And
what we should say, David, is and it's interesting, I get so close to this, I forget some of the details. So all of our work is delivered over the phone. We have a chatbot technology that we've developed. And the whole idea is that to help the change, you're trying to get that individual to have the conversation with themselves. So this idea of sitting down face to face, it doesn't actually add anything to the outcome. As nice as that would be, and as nice as it is even to have video on our call today, when you're trying to get someone to change their behaviors, it's about helping them go internal. Mm-hmm. And we do that through using, an old-fashioned headset or handset. Yeah. Which is why it can be so portable and so easy to happen, across a country, across a continent.
Right. Well, that totally makes sense. Yeah. And so, and you have a book, right?
I do.
And so Emma's an official expert.
I have two books now, David. There's been another one arrived since we last spoke.
Okay. I haven't seen that, so no. I apologize. I will make sure I get a copy. And so both the books are on the same topic?
Yes, so the Turning Learning into Action is the book that's around our methodology and our approach. And the second book was co-written with Jack and Patty Phillips from the ROI Institute, and that's called Making Change Work. Because, of course, there's also, when we're looking at change within organizations, a lot of money invested in change, with the reality being that people don't change. So it's tackling the people part of change initiatives as well. So that was the second book. But for the learning premise, the turning learning into action is all about the learning transfer methodology.
Got it. And so what's the best way for somebody to either get a hold of you or learn more, or take that next step? What do you recommend for resources?
So we have a lot of free resources on the website, which is transferoflearning.com. We have a free online action planning tool, which is part of our mission to make a difference to learning transfer worldwide, that people can check out, turninglearningintoaction.com. But what I would say is, I'm happy to chat. We want to make a big difference to learning transfer worldwide. Our approach isn't going to be right for everyone, but let's just explore. And I'm happy to share what's worked with people, what I've seen happen that's not worked, and have a conversation, because I think the more conversations we've got happening about transfer, the more impact as learning professionals will make. So the website is a great way to keep in touch with me, or LinkedIn, Emma Weber, which is like Weber with one B, as we say.
Yeah.
Very happy for people to connect in that way.
Wonderful. Okay. I think we're all done unless you have anything else. I can listen to you talk all day, but I know you're busy and you're just starting your day up. So
the day is just starting here. But thank you, Dave. Thank you for, what I've loved is from when we first spoke, you work very closely in the HR and across all different disciplines within that, and you kind of get it. So it's great to chat with you today. So thank you for inviting me into the conversation.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and continued success. Thanks, Emma.
Thank you.